It was the only really stronghold in the south, west of the Mississippi River that we had, or not, I mean west of the Appalachians, that we had not done what? Taken. Remember, we didn't get Vicksburg. And I said we'll come back and talk about Vicksburg later. We took everything else in the Western Theater except for Vicksburg. So, when we talk about the battle for Vicksburg, on the same day that General Lee and the Confederates were retreating from Gettysburg, the Union won an important victory in the Western Theater by securing Vicksburg. So ironically, on the same day that General Lee and the Confederates were retreating from Gettysburg, an important Union victory in the Western Theater was won at Vicksburg, Mississippi. Again, on the same day that General Lee and the Confederates were retreating from Gettysburg, an important Union victory in the Western Theater was won at Vicksburg. It happened on July 4th, 1863. Who was the Union general that captured Vicksburg, do you want to guess? Grant. Ulysses S. Grant. So, on July 4th, 1863, ironically, the same day that General Lee and the Confederates were retreating from Gettysburg, General Ulysses S. Grant secures Vicksburg, Mississippi for the Union. Now, I'll tell you, these people in Vicksburg were incredibly tough. And you'll see examples of this on the movie The Blue and the Gray, how hard the Confederates held out in Vicksburg. Grant tried to take that southern city 5 different times and failed 5 different times. So this was a sweet victory for General Grant and the Union forces. They had made a big effort in Vicksburg. Grant had tried to capture the southern city 5 times prior to succeeding on the 6th. Now, again, you'd have to almost picture this, and you will get a very good vision of this in the movie. Union forces had been bombing Vicksburg for weeks. I'm just bombing them unmercifully. The people didn't have anything to eat. The city was basically in ruins. But they held out and held out and held out, and finally they just couldn't hold out anymore. They had nothing left and were forced to surrender. And it was a crushing blow to the people of Vicksburg to finally have to surrender their city. But I'll tell you, these people were tough. And again, you're going to see some examples in the movie The Blue and the Gray. Just tough people. They just bombed them, bombed them, bombed them. It was unbelievable. And finally, they couldn't take any more. And on July 4th, 1863, they surrendered. Now, the Union strategy in the Western Theater is complete with this Union victory at Vicksburg because they now have full control of the Mississippi River. And they have cut the Confederacy in half. Now we'll continue in the Western Theater, and we're going to have another battle there, which is our next subtopic, the Battle of Chattanooga. The Battle of Chattanooga. Now, what they're going to try to do is, once they get control of Vicksburg here, they're going to try to push through Tennessee and move down into Georgia. They want to sweep the entire South here. So they're basically win the victory at Vicksburg, and then they're basically going to come down this area through Tennessee and into Georgia. That's what they want to do, is just sweep the entire South. So they're going to have to win a victory at Chattanooga, Tennessee to do that. So that's what we're talking about now. Now, the city of Chattanooga, if you know your geography, is located right on the Tennessee River, which is right on the Tennessee-Georgia border. Okay? So we're talking about right in this area right here is Chattanooga. It's right on the Tennessee River, and so this is where the battle is going to take place, and they hope to win there so they can sweep down through Georgia and sweep through the South, which we'll talk about. So, in September of 1863, Union General William Rosecrans battled Confederate forces under the command of Braxton Bragg. So, in September of 1863, Union General William Rosecrans battled Confederate forces under the command of Braxton Bragg. So in September of 1863, in Chattanooga, Tennessee, the Union led by General William Rosecrans will battle the Confederates led by General Braxton Bragg. And they're going to meet at a little place called Chickamauga Creek. Chickamauga Creek is where the battle is actually going to take place outside Chattanooga. So rebel forces and Confederate forces are going to meet in September of 1863 at Chickamauga Creek, which is a little bit outside Chattanooga. And guess who wins this battle early?
We do.
Who's we?
Union.
Huh? Actually, the Confederates. The Confederate Army were defeating the Union forces at Chickamauga Creek, and General Rosecrans' goal was to hang on until he could get what from Grant? Reinforcements. Okay? So the rebels are handing it to the Union forces pretty good at Chickamauga Creek near Chattanooga, Tennessee. And Rosecrans, the Union general's goal is to just hang on, not lose the battle totally, hoping to get reinforcements from General Grant. Well, Grant arrives not only with reinforcements with other generals, Joe Hooker, George Thomas, and William T. Sherman. So Grant arrives with the much-needed reinforcements that Rosecrans needs. He also arrives with 3 other commanders, Generals Joe Hooker, who we've talked about before, General George Thomas, and General William T. Sherman. Okay? Hooker, Thomas, and William T. Sherman, along with many reinforcements, arrive with General Grant at Chickamauga Creek and assist General Rosecrans, who's just hanging on till they get there. Well, now the Union forces are quite strong after being reinforced, and they win major victories at Lookout Mountain and Missionary Ridge. So after the reinforcements arrive with General Grant and other quality commanders, the Union goes on the offensive in Tennessee and wins 2 major victories at Lookout Mountain and Missionary Ridge. So with these victories at Lookout Mountain and Missionary Ridge, the Tennessee-Georgia border is secured for what? For who? The Union. So this is going to pave the way for General Sherman's famous March to the Sea that upcoming spring, and we'll talk about that. So again, Union forces that are now reinforced win major victories in Tennessee at Lookout Mountain and Missionary Ridge. With these 2 victories, they secure, the Union does, the Tennessee-Georgia border, and it's going to set the stage for William Sherman's famous March to the Sea from Tennessee through Georgia the upcoming spring, and we'll talk about that. So we're kicking butt in the Western Theater, are we not? Okay, well, let's move back to the Eastern Theater. And Lincoln's going to make another change as far as overall commander of Union forces. Was he upset at Meade after Gettysburg? Disappointed, I think, because he didn't, follow Lee and try to crush the Confederates at that point. He was disappointed, but maybe not upset. But he decides to change commanders anyway on March 9th, 1864. March 9th, 1864. And who does he turn the overall command to? It'll be his last change. Who's going to take overall command? General Grant. So on March 9th, 1864, President Lincoln appoints General Ulysses S. Grant as overall commander of Union forces. Now, he's got an army in the Western Theater, he's got an army in the Eastern Theater. Who's going to take command of the Eastern Theater? He is. No, Grant is. Who's he going to give command of the Western Theater to? The one that's going to make Georgia howl? Sherman. So General Sherman will be given command or control of the Western Theater of the war, and Grant will take control of the Eastern armies. Now, where is the majority of the fighting going to be in the Eastern Theater? Right in the state of Virginia. So Grant will be doing a majority of this fighting in the Eastern Theater right in the state of Virginia. And what's Sherman going to do? He's going to go from Chattanooga, Tennessee, through the Deep South, and basically clear everything to the sea. His march to the sea. So he'll be in this area going this way, and Grant will concentrate in Virginia. And they're going to meet where, basically what's going to happen is Sherman is going to go through Georgia and come up through the coast, and the idea is to meet Grant in Virginia, where he'll be doing a ton of fighting here. Now that's going to take us to another subtopic. That last one's very short, and it's kind of a subtopic. It's called the Virginia Campaigns. We're going to tell you about 3 major battles that Grant initiated in Virginia during this time. 3 very important battles. The Battle of the Wilderness, the Battle of Spotsylvania, and the Battle of Cold Harbor will be the 3 we'll be talking about individually. So there are going to be 3 very important battles fought in Virginia in 1864 with the Union under Grant's command. The Battle of the Wilderness, the Battle of Spotsylvania, and the Battle of Cold Harbor, all in Virginia. And we'll start with the Battle of the Wilderness. And you will see a description of this battle in the movie The Blue and the Gray very, very well. This battle here, the Battle of the Wilderness. Now this very famous Civil War battle was fought on May 5th and May 6th of 1864. This very famous Civil War battle, known as the Battle of the Wilderness, was fought on May 5th and 6th of 1864. Was it fought in any particular city or area? It was fought in an area known to Virginians as the Wilderness. It was just a very heavy forested area in Virginia. Well, this is probably a bad drawing, but basically what you have is you have this wilderness area and this open field. And Grant was going to march his men through the wilderness, and his plan was to fight Lee and the Confederates in that open field on the other side of the wilderness. So the plan was that General Grant and General Lee were to collide in a clearing on the other side of this forested land. Well, Lee's not stupid. It's to his advantage to do what? Attack them while they're in the wilderness, because he's outgunned, right? So Lee makes the decision to attack the Union troops directly in the wilderness to hide the fact that he only had half as many men. Probably a pretty good strategy. So this is not a small area. This is a really vast wilderness. And Grant's hoping to get through the wilderness and get into that open clearing, and that's where he's going to engage Lee. Well, Lee's thinking, hey, we got half as many men, we'll engage them in the wilderness.
Interruption, just a couple of quick announcements before we end our 5th hour. Got an item in the office at the end of the day for Nathan Kern, and want to give a shout out to a birthday today. We forgot to do that this morning. Stacy Adams, happy birthday.
Okay, well, the Battle of the Wilderness lasted 2 full days.
Hunter B, would you come to the office at the end of the hour? Thank you.
The Battle of the Wilderness lasted 2 full days and was considered the most savage fighting of the Civil War. Most savage fighting in the Civil War, which means there weren't many rules. So the Battle of the Wilderness lasted 2 full days and was considered the most savage fighting of the entire war. Hand-to-hand, close-up action. Now when the Battle of the Wilderness was over, the Union lost over 19,000 men. And the Confederates lost 9,000. So when the Battle of the Wilderness ended, bloody, savage fighting, hand-to-hand, close-range fighting, the Confederates lost 9,000, the Union 19,000. Now, this is really sad but true. If you have a battle with cannon fire in the wilderness, what's it going to result in the wilderness? Fires. Many wounded men on both sides burnt to death as the wilderness caught on fire during the cannon fire that occurred. Many of these wounded that could not get up and move and nobody could get to simply laid in the wilderness and burnt to death. Can you imagine a death worse than that? Man, oh man, burnt to death. Now, who won? Really, it was more of a Union victory than a Confederate victory, even though the Union lost 19,000, the Confederates lost 9, because who had the bigger population? The Union. So, really, the Confederates couldn't afford to lose any soldiers. So, although Union casualties were much higher than that of the South, the Confederates really suffered the most in the Battle of the Wilderness, as they could not afford to lose such troops. Okay, we'll finish up today with the Battle of Spotsylvania. It's kind of a short one. Battle of Spotsylvania. Well, after the Battle of the Wilderness, where is General Grant and the Union marching toward? No, after the battle's over, but they're going to be on the march now. Where are they going? They're heading to Richmond. Okay, this will be a continual pounding to Richmond. So after the Battle of the Wilderness, General Grant does not stop and rest much. He continues his march towards Richmond, and on May 10th, 11th, and 12th of 1864, on May 10th, 11th, and 12th, 1864, Confederate and Union forces meet again, this time at Spotsylvania, Virginia. So they continue, Grant and his men continue to march towards Richmond, and on May 10th, 11th, and 12th of 1864, Confederate and Union forces meet in battle, this time at Spotsylvania. Well, again, the goal that General Lee and the Confederates have in this battle is to halt the Union advance to Richmond, right? Doesn't happen. They fail to halt that Union advance, and Grant loses another 12,000 men. And I don't even tell you how many the Confederates lose. Why? Because every man they lose is a disaster. It doesn't even matter how many they lose. If they lose one, it's a problematic thing for them. So Grant continues to march towards Richmond. On those days I mentioned in May, the two sides again collide with Lee's goal to halt the Union advance. He does not halt the Union advance. They will continue to march towards Richmond. Grant loses 12,000 men, and we're at the point in the Civil War for the Confederates that any loss of one man is a problem. So, what we'll do tomorrow, we'll get through this. This will be perfect. I don't think I'll have to lecture, but we'll see. Tomorrow in the Battle of Cold Harbor, it's going to be another battle close to where? Richmond. Okay? And it's just getting worse and worse and worse for the Confederacy, which is going to result in surrender pretty quick here.